Hi, everyone. My name is Lee Nunery, and I'm pleased to be with you for a few minutes to talk about a very important, I would call seminal study and report that the U.S. House Committee on Financial Services did in 2022. Now, this was in the 117th Congress. We now have a new Congress in session, but we're doing this largely because of testimony I provided to the committee late last year. And of course, this is being hosted by the Million Women Mentors Women in Insurance Initiative, of which I'm a proud advisor and participant. To be very clear, this effort that the Congressional Committee launched was largely, if not solely, at the behest of Congresswoman Maxine Waters, Auntie Maxine, as she is often known. And it was her drive, and then the subcommittee chair, Joyce Beatty from Ohio, that really created the context for a study. Now, what was interesting is not only that they look at financial services, insurance, banking, and investment advisory, but they try to look at a 5 year time span to see what had improved over those years in terms of demographics and psychographics. What kind of performance of diversity and inclusion was there? And so this is the first time that I know of that the Congress had actually delved into it. One of the things they found in comparing the sectors of banks versus investment firms and insurance companies is what you see on the left side of the screen. By and large, those segments of financial services, in terms of demographic composition, are dominated by white men. So you see for banks, 58% white men versus investment firms, 59%, and insurance companies, 69%. And since we're talking about insurance, we're going to zero in largely there. But if you look at the bottom pie chart, you see how some of those numbers compare to other financial services sectors. My experience says that those numbers are very much right, especially as you climb the ranks, and that is something that Women in Insurance Initiative has also uncovered through its study a few years ago and the current work going on now. That the more you climb up the ladder, the fewer women you will see. Now, particularly in insurance, this is important because they sent surveys out to 27 property and casualty and life insurers with direct premiums written of $7 billion or more. So they captured the large ones. And the reason why that's important is that and the reason why I was invited to testify was because the APCIA, the American Property and Casualty Insurance Association, had also done a DEI study, but we looked at premium levels from small, medium, and large. So only a few of those companies would have been in this mix. But it's still important to see what happens at the larger companies. And that study or report that the Congressional Committee performed looked at, as I mentioned, a 5 year period. It was a self assessment, so self reporting. And it looked at these six categories of workforce diversity, executive leadership diversity, CEO diversity, board diversity, supplier diversity, and investment of assets. The figure on the left is from the study, and it shows that unfortunately there is a paucity of women in leadership roles, CEO roles in those 27 companies. There was one Asian man and a predominant number of men who are CEOs. Now, you can get into a lot of different issues and suppositions or assumptions. One is that insurance overall still has a challenge in attracting talent into it. There are still hundreds of thousands of roles open, and as distribution changes and technology becomes more of a mainstay in insurance as opposed to the old analog way of doing things, there are openings in every sector of insurance, marketing, IT, human resources, etc. Where you come in the door and how you go through the hallway to the big C-suite, it matters. If you're on the production side, if you're on the claim side, maybe on technology now, underwriting, it may be that those roles tend to lead you towards leadership. But the question on that left side is, why are there so few women represented? And in fact, you see the statistics on the right side that women comprise 28.5% of insurance company boards, 28% of investment boards, and 30% of bank boards. But the people of color, as they are described, are far less in percentages. So that's a highlight and a finding from that report. And it comports with what I have found in my study for the National African American Insurance Association, what we found for APCIA, that the funnel gets narrowed as you go higher. The amount of money spent with suppliers, I thought, was also a telling factoid, and that is you see it there only in the single digits, where there's money being spent with diverse suppliers, with insurance companies, under 3% across the board. And so there's an opportunity for companies to improve that with intention. These are some quotes. Oops, sorry. These are some quotes that you'll find within the study. I urge you to look for it. You'll see the footnote at the bottom there where the study is. Now that there's been a change in control over the committee and, of course, in Congress, this report is harder to find. But if you go to Democrats Financial Services, et cetera, you'll find the full study. First quote, among America's largest insurance companies, there was little change in racial, ethnic, and gender representation among employees over the 5 years queried. So essentially, this industry, even though the balance sheets have gotten bigger, the insurance is vital to our economy. You've seen what's happened very recently with a couple of banks failing, that deposit insurance, another form of insurance, has kicked in. But in terms of who's working within those companies, the needle hasn't moved. Women had a higher representation of employment in lower level roles. Now, that is really critical. So they're coming in almost to more than 3/4 of them as administrative support, people who identify as women. But then when it comes to going up that ladder, as I described, the percentages drop dramatically. Among companies surveyed, women were underrepresented in 2021 in executive level roles, with only a third or so identifying as women. Only 12 companies of the 27 stated they invest with women-owned asset managers, and oftentimes that one function can make a huge difference in not only how those businesses succeed as asset managers, but also what other opportunities and engagements they get across the way. And then lastly, and this one is the one that really, I think, deserves a lot of attention. In 2021, 79% of insurance companies did not have a reporting structure in which the diversity officer reported to the CEO or president. And that says a lot to me about where that individual charged with diversity and inclusion stands, and whether or not they, in fact, will have any type of real impact. It is going to depend largely on to whom they report and how often. So that's basically detail that you can find within the report. Here's what struck me when I read it, and then also had the chance to testify and have talked about this a lot. Voice, advocacy, and agency are screaming when you read this report. If you're not represented, then it's hard to get that kind of advocacy that you need. So it's up to the individuals involved, I believe, to advocate for themselves and also have agency. The good thing is, if you will, even though the results are not terrific, that there is now a statistical baseline. So from 2017 to 2021 is the period of time that the Financial Services Committee studied. It will be interesting to see how we're doing, if you will, in terms of diversity and equity over the next 5 years. The importance of Million Women Mentors and Women in Insurance Initiative is the studies that have been done almost contiguously with this congressional study, is that it also provides a baseline. So anybody who's listening, if you've not participated, please do. Lastly, there's a comparative analytic here. There's a lot of data scarcity. Some of it because of self-assessment. You're never sure if the numbers you're getting are accurate. We'll assume that they are. But you have to start going now into industry sectors. In property and casualty insurance, is the same experience? Is there the same experience as there is in life insurance or professional liability? Where are women in terms of rank and title and function? How much are they paid? Are they paid comparably? So comparative analysis is important here as we all advocate for more, but more of what exactly? You don't want necessarily more people coming in at the lower levels and staying there and plateauing. That's what we found with the journey studies. What you do want, hopefully, is that you've got enlightened companies who understand the power of not only who's represented inside their organizations, but who their customers and clients may be. So the report also from Congress seeks a number of different recommendations or lays them out. They advocate for disaggregated data. They want companies to widen their search when it comes to looking for executives or board members. They really push this issue of supplier diversity as a priority. As I noted, under 3% of their spend is going to diverse suppliers. So there's a much more room for improvement there with businesses that are certified, but even businesses that are owned and uncertified. So there are opportunities there. Pay equity, compensation equity, workload balance are also hugely important issues. And then lastly, they advocate for a lead DEI or D&I executive. My experience has been, especially consulting with trade associations and companies and now working in the space, that dedicated resources do matter. But what matters more is that DEI is recognized as a priority, that there is an understanding that DEI is not something that is reflexive because of a unfortunate event like George Floyd's murder or any others that have occurred. It goes beyond that episode. It shouldn't be idiosyncratic. There should be a sense that DEI matters because it affects everybody in the company. One of the things that they didn't talk at length about within this report from Congress is the low presence of LGBTQ plus, as well as those who are physically disabled. And those two sectors alone are so low in percentage that this report also says they want insurers to start opening their eyes to the fact that there's talent out there that isn't tapped. The last thing I'll say in conclusion, that we're at a critical point where there are a lot of challenges to woke corporations, to looking at diversity as if it's taking something away from somebody else. Depending on where you are in the argument, you could say that. There's also this inherent competition. If women do well, will African American males not do well? Some of that is real. There's no denying that, but a lot of it is also about context. And what I think we all have to do, particularly with the Women in Insurance Initiative, is to advocate for everyone to get a fair shot. That equity means what it means. That if you have the talent and you have the drive, then you should be able to succeed and change some of the dynamics of the industry for the better. So I'll conclude there and just say that it's been a pleasure to be associated with the initiative over the last 3 or 4 years. Anyone who is hearing this and wants to really participate, please do raise your hand. We'd love to get you involved in the discussion because as we do that, as we engage, even if we disagree on some things, we're going to have a much better opportunity, I think, to improve the outcomes. So with that, I will say bid you a fond adieu and look forward to seeing you at some point in the near future.